My name is Mira Kanter, and I am been now a part of some of these community days, and it's a really wonderful opportunity to share some things that I find are that I'm passionate about and that are interesting, and I think that you will as well. Find either it's something new or potentially a reminder if you've already known about the blue zones. I find that no matter how much I hear about them or read about them, there's always something that I can be reminded of, or even something new. And I am registered dietitian. I work for Oracle in corporate wellness. Been doing wellness for about 30 something years. The years seem to have added up. Although we're talking about the world's longest lived people, and I could say that, they have a sense of purpose, which we'll talk about, and, doing something that they find passionate. So I guess the numbers are irrelevant, I think, in terms of doing something like sharing wellness information. And the blue zones are something I learned about many years ago. And they right now are making some headway because there's going to be another blue zone. So it's a really appropriate topic. There's going to be an additional blue zone. So we'll talk about what this all is as we continue on in the day. So blue zones, what are they? Where do they come from? Where do they originate? This gentleman here, Dan Buettner, he is really largely responsible for coining the blue zones. He worked with a doctor who found that there was a pocket of centenarians in the villages of Sardinia, Italy, and they drew a blue zone around this area to signify that this is where these people lived the longest and seemed the healthiest and happiest. And Dan Buettner received some funding from the National Institutes on Aging, and he partnered with National Geographic, and they went to explore different parts of the world where they were finding more people that were either centenarians or had a high middle age life expectancy. And so they identified these places, and they found certain things that they had in common, so that you can extract this information and even apply it to your own life. And they published this information in 2005. So I love this picture and this saying. There was actually a New York Times article that was titled "The Island Where People Forget to Die." This is Icaria, Greece, and there's a whole story about the people there, and what differentiates them from other areas. And they specifically highlighted one gentleman, this man here, who I find just endearing. His name is Stamatis Moraitis. He was a Greek war veteran, and he survived a gunshot wound, escaped to Turkey, and talked his way onto the Queen Elizabeth, made his way to the US to seek treatment for a combat mangled arm. And then he healed, and he settled in New York in an enclave of his fellow countrymen from Icaria, and married and had 3 children. And one day in 1976, he felt short of breath and sought the attention of his doctor, and then sought the attention of 9 other doctors who concluded that he had lung cancer. And they gave him 9 months to live. Looks like someone's trying to get in, so I'm going to admit them. And at that time, he was in his mid-60s. So he considered staying in America, seeking aggressive treatment at a local hospital to be close to his children. And then, however, he contemplated, how much a funeral would cost. So he's just expecting, obviously, he's not going to live. And in America, it would be, thousands of dollars, whereas opposed to back in his home country of Icaria, might only be $200 for a funeral. So he thought, well, I can leave more of my retirement to my wife. So he decided to return to Icaria to be buried with his ancestors in a cemetery shaded by oak trees that overlook the Aegean Sea. And he and his wife moved in with his elderly parents. They were on a tiny house, 2 acres of stepped vineyards. And at first, he spent his days in his bed. He and his wife and his mother would attend to him. He reconnected with his faith. On Sunday mornings, he'd hobble up to the tiny Greek Orthodox chapel where his grandfather once served as a priest. And then his childhood friends discovered that he had moved back, and they started showing up every afternoon. They talked for hours, and this talking invariably involved a bottle of wine or two of locally produced wine. And he thought, well, I might as well die happy. And in the ensuing months, something strange happened. He said he started to feel stronger. And one day he was feeling ambitious. And so he started to plant some vegetables in the garden. And he didn't think he'd live to see them harvest, but he thought, well, I enjoy being in the sunshine, breathing in the ocean air, and his wife could enjoy the vegetables after he was gone. Then 6 months came and went, and stomitis did not pass away. Instead, he reaped his garden. He was feeling, quite energetic, and cleaned up his family vineyard. And he was just kind of easing himself into the typical island routine. Woke up when he felt like it, worked in the vineyards until mid-afternoon, made himself lunch, and then took a long nap. In the evenings, he would get together with his friends, go to a local tavern, play dominoes past midnight. And the years passed, and his health continued to improve. He added a couple rooms to his parents' home so his children could visit. He built up the vineyard, and it was producing 400 gallons of wine a year. And then in 2012, he decided, after 3.5 decades after his diagnosis, he was 97 years old, although he disputes that he was actually 102, but he was cancer-free. And so he never took any kind of medication, didn't do chemotherapy. He just moved home to Icaria. And when he was asked how he thinks that he recovered from lung cancer, he said it just went away. And that he went back to America about 25 years after returning to Icaria to see if his doctors could explain it to him. And he said the doctors were all deceased. So quite a story, right? And he ended up passing away peacefully not from cancer in 2013. So quite impressionable story. Obviously there is a place for medicine, modern medicine. But in this case, it really portrays how important other factors can be in our lives that we might not realize. And the statistics in every blue zone, which we'll learn about, are really quite striking. The number of years that people are living past the typical American. And this, here you can see Icarian men are nearly 4 times as likely as American men to reach 90, and often in better health. They live 8 to 10 years longer before succumbing to the typical diseases that we see here, from cancer, cardiovascular disease, depression, dementia. As we talked about in the story, they stay up late, wake up late, take naps. They do a lot of gardening. They socialize, especially with local wine. And they really are about taking care of each other. So they're not a me place, they're an S place. They give leftover money to the poor in their community. And a big part of all the blue zones is they are plant-based. So there's an absence of sugar and white flour. And as well, huge emphasis on beans. And we'll talk about this more, but beans like lentils and garbanzos, potatoes, greens, olive oil, certain types of bread, and goat's milk. And then a lot of these cultures, especially Icaria, they have certain types of tea, medicinal beverages that they drink. This is a quote by Dan Buettner. "It's difficult to change individual behaviors when community behaviors stay the same. But the factors that encourage longevity reinforce one over another over the long term. For people to adopt a healthful lifestyle, they need to live in an ecosystem that makes it possible. The power of such environment lies in the mutually reinforcing relationships among lots of small nudges and default choices." So the blue zones, and I'm realizing this is in the way here, I'm going to push this down a little bit. Or maybe I'll just bring it down for right now. The original blue zones we just talked about, there was Sardinia and Icaria. There's also the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, Okinawa, Japan, and Loma Linda, California, surprisingly, in the States. This is where there's a predominantly large population of Seventh-day Adventists. And they have kind of similar practices with plant-based diets and moving throughout the day. The only ones that don't drink wine out of all of the blue zones. So Loma Linda, again, plant-based diet. Costa Rica, Nicoya Peninsula, Their water is actually naturally rich in calcium and magnesium. So their tortillas are heavy in this, and this helps them prevent heart disease and keeping their bones strong, keeping them from being weak. Sardinia, Italy, daily wine and laughter. And Sardinia men, it's in the mountain ranges, they're working a lot and throughout the day, physical labor. Icaria, Greece, as we talked about. And then Okinawa, Japan, they have dedication to family and friends. And the Okinawan women, they're the longest living females in the world. This is a picture of one of the Seventh-day Adventists doing a yoga pose. So, and I think this is kind of in the way here. Hopefully you can see it, but this is the Power 9. And we'll talk about each one more specifically, but you'll see the categories here: move, right outlook, eat wisely, and connect. So we have move naturally throughout the day. We have purpose, waking up with a sense of, direction in your life. Downshifting, a way to relax and unwind. 80% rule, and we'll go into these more detail, but how much you're eating at each meal. Plant slant, plant-based diets. Wine at 5. Right tribe. Love one first, and a sense of belonging. So the first one, moving naturally, it's here, we're so used to people going to the gym, and that's a great thing. But the world's longest lived people, they're not doing that. They're not actually going to a gym or running marathons. They're actually just moving naturally in their environment. And they've actually done some research and showing that they move approximately every 20 minutes. So they might be weeding or watering or harvesting, but they're not using like typical, modern conveniences like lawnmowers or things like of that nature. Although maybe not so much, that's not so much done in California with our drought, but they really are, doing physical things by hand, kneading bread by hand. And so by moving every 20 minutes and doing these physical activities, they actually have a higher rate of metabolism, moving throughout the day. So it's a good reminder. I know we're sitting in front of the computer now, but maybe when we're done, we'll go and we'll walk around a little bit and get some circulation in our bodies, get ourselves moving. Secondly, they have a sense of purpose. In Japan, the Okinawans call it ikigai. In the Nikkei Peninsula, they call it plan de vida. So they both translate to really why I wake up in the morning. And knowing your sense of purpose, supposedly, from the research that's done, is worth about 7 to 8 extra years of your life expectancy. So quite striking, quite significant. And I'm imagining that all of you on the call have a sense of purpose, and maybe we can share that afterwards. So downshift, even in the blue zones areas, they have, stresses in their lives. And as we know, stress leads to chronic inflammation. It's associated with every major age-related disease. But the world's longest lived people, they have routines that we don't necessarily have and that shed stress. They practice daily rituals to reduce stress, like the Okinawans take a few moments each day to remember their ancestors, the Adventists pray, the Icarians take a nap, and the Sardinians do happy hour. The 80% rule, this is a tough one, I must say, for myself. And I try to think about this more often than not, but don't always achieve it. But this is the 80% rule. Hari Hachi Bar, as the Okinawans refer to it. It's a 2,500-year-old Confucian mantra that said before meals that reminds them to stop eating when their stomachs are 80% full. And it said that the 20% gap between not being hungry and feeling full could be the difference of whether you are losing weight or gaining it. And really, we know that if you're eating predominantly earlier in the day, it's better. You're metabolizing throughout the day. And then, if you can try to stop eating after 5 to 6 o'clock in the evening, that's been told to, be correlated, especially with a lot of the fasting that's been in a lot of the research that's come out to show that that's really actually really beneficial for our body, to give our bodies a break from eating. Plant slant. This is one of the biggest things, takeaways from the blue zone areas. They're all predominantly plant-based. And 4 of the main pillars are really beans, greens, whole grains, and nuts. And, whole grains are things like farro, quinoa, brown rice, oatmeal, bulgur wheat. With their nuts, a handful of nuts is recommended to have every day, or at least, and that can add approximately 2 extra years to your life. So it seems like a fairly simple thing to do, to add some years. Beans, really one of the main pillars. It said to like a half a cup to a cup a day could add 4 extra years to your life. Again, seems like an easy thing to do, although maybe it's not so easy to get the beans in necessarily every day, but something to think about. And then, fruits and vegetables, greens are a big one, especially tubers. They're talked about a lot about, like sweet potatoes, things, native to these areas. And so really when we're talking about these particular foods, we're talking about taking out and avoiding the sweet, sugar laden beverages and foods and processed foods, salty foods, and moving towards a whole plant-based type of diet. And then as well, they're also really adding a lot of flavor into their meals, so that keeps them wanting to eat it, because it tastes pleasurable. It is pleasurable to eat it, and it tastes the flavors are enticing. So this is the food guidelines for the Blue Zones. You'll see here it's predominantly plant-based, talked about whole grains, beans. They're drinking mostly water. They do have some, coffee, tea, and wine in moderation. And this in small print says, try to eat with your family and friends and share these activities and positively influence each other. Snacking on nuts. And they actually recommend not having as much fish per week, having minimal amounts, as well as minimal amounts of eggs, sugar, reducing dairy. And then with meat, they really don't eat meat very often, the Blue Zones. They eat about 5 times a month, maybe about 2 to 3 ounces, so not very much. It's a pretty small amount. And this again is emphasizing, always try to incorporate the whole grains, nuts, beans, and fruits and vegetables. Avoid the sugar laden snacks and foods. So another Blue Zone pillar is wine at 5. As I mentioned, all of the Blue Zones except for the Seventh-day Adventist partake in this. And it's really moderation, 1 to 2 glasses at the most. And some of their wines, like their Sardinian wine, have, really specific nutrients and properties in there that are beneficial to their health. And as always, they're not saying to do this all in one day. So not to put all your drinks in one day of the week. So it's really just a little bit each day if you're going to have that at all. And then there's a sense of belongings. Most of the Blue Zones communities are faith-based. It doesn't seem to matter the denomination. Our research shows that attending faith-based services 4 times per month can add 4 to 14 years of life expectancy. Some big numbers there. Loved ones first. So this is definitely a big one that we're seeing, especially, after the pandemic, and knowing how much it's important to have people around you that you care about, that care about you. And the centenarians, they put their families first. So their aging parents and grandparents live close by, and it's shown to lower disease and mortality rates of children in the home too. And often they commit to a life partner. I know we just had Valentine's Day, so it's appropriate to focus on love and connection and relationships. And they're saying that this loving relationship can add 3 years of life expectancy. And so, really is about taking care of each other and being supportive of those that are close to you. Right tribe. And this is one that we see as well connected to this social connection. So the world's longest live with certain people that they grew up with their whole life. So in the Okinawans, they have a group called the Moais. It's a group of 5 friends that committed to each other for life. And we know from the famous Framingham studies that smoking, obesity, happiness, and even loneliness are contagious. So social networks really can shape behaviors. It said that your immediate social circle, if you, like say your 3 best friends, their health and habits can really affect yourself. If you're closest friends are overweight, obese, there's 150% chance that you could take on those practices and characteristics yourself. Now, I'm not sure if any of you have heard of the Blue Zones, and yet if you've heard of the Blue Zone communities, but these areas of the world where they're living the healthiest and longest, it's great to learn about them. However, how does it affect us, and how can we incorporate that into our lives? And so throughout the years, I think there's now 17 communities throughout the US where there's concentrated effort to incorporate these Blue Zone practices. And it really takes buy-in from all sorts of sectors of the community, from government to restaurants to schools to individuals, community centers, and everyone's working together to make healthy choices the easy choice, and creating more walkable areas, and having more items closer to the cash register that are healthy, providing some education in the school and workplaces around healthy behaviors. And it's really interesting to see if you looked up some of these areas, and the number of the reduction in obesity and smoking and just overall health. It's really made a difference. And so there's kind of that reinforcement of who you're around, what you're seeing, and how that influences your own individual health and well-being. So the quote there is, "Make the healthy choice the easy choice." And here's one of the Blue Zones participants diving into a pool. There is a Blue Zones challenge that you can take part in. This is online, actually. And there is, this is actually linked, but I know that you don't have the link to this, but you can go onto their site and you can learn all about the Blue Zones furthermore for after this talk, if you're interested. And you can actually sign up for the challenge. The first week is Eat Wisely. The second week is Move Naturally. The third week is Right Tribe. And the fourth week is Right Outlook. And then I do have this link too. You can go on to the sites and you can take a true vitality test or a true happiness test, and test your level of happiness and well-being. And then of course tap into some of these Blue Zone practices in your own life and see how you can enhance that for yourself and for others around you.
Mira, can you send us those links?
I definitely can. Yes.
Yeah.
And I just listened to a talk, an interview Dan Buettner did, person to person, and I can also send you that link too. It's nice too to kind of see some of this live. They have some video of the different areas, the different people that they have come into contact with and done research on. He's on Instagram and Facebook. So if you're on those particular social media sites, they post quite regularly. They also send an email out. I almost want to say weekly or daily sometimes. So there's really no end to the amount of information that you can receive and to continue your knowledge set on the Blue Zones. Dan Buettner also just produced a cookbook. He has, I believe, quite a few books out and cookbooks, and the recent one is really focused on moving from the standard American diet to this plant-based whole foods type of diet. And what he found is certain parts of our country, there were certain cultures that actually were really following a Blue Zones type of diet. Like even what we think of as soul food, he talked about, a lot of times people think it's, very greasy or, high fat, high sugar, but the basis of a lot of these cultures was originally, just your plant-based foods prepared in a very healthy way. And he talked about as well that so much of these diets, especially these plant-based diets, are actually very economical too. So it doesn't take a lot of money. You don't have to, buy, all sorts of high-end fancy foods. When you get down to the meat of it, the whole grains, the beans, the nuts, it's all very reasonable in terms of cost and easy to prepare, actually. maybe the more challenging thing is to try to find ways to cook it so that it's interesting to you and that you want to continue doing it as they are doing in the Blue Zones, making it, really tasty. So that it's enticing. And he talked about if you can, grab a few recipes from his book or other, recipes, and kind of have them as your go-to and share those with your family or your friends. And then you can make it so that it's, more likely that people are going to want to eat this way. I think we have a lot of temptations, and we were just talking before we started the call about Valentine's Day and all the sugar and, the food that's around us. And when you go to the store, especially, there's so many things that are tempting that are processed. And it is really hard to move away from that. But the more that you can incorporate some of the healthy practices, then some of those things go a little bit by the wayside. You might still engage in some of that, but the more you can focus on, the greens, the nuts, the beans, the whole grains, the better your body will feel too. I noticed for myself, at least, you might enjoy eating certain foods that are not necessarily as nutritious, but the feeling that your body has afterwards is maybe potentially not as ideal. And when you start eating more plant-based or, just more wholesome, your body starts to run differently. You start to feel better and, be maybe more alert or feel, a bit more content or motivated as well. So has anyone heard of the Blue Zones prior to today? You can maybe put in the chat or raise your hand. And I wonder if anyone has any practices similar to these that they're already doing or can share with other people. It looks like we got someone saying, yes, you've heard of them. Wonderful. Any other practices that you feel like really resonate with you? I don't know if anyone wants to share, but I think we're getting consensus that yes, they do. I think just for me, at least with the Blue Zones, yeah, someone's saying plant slant has made a big difference for sure. That's great. Yeah, I think we know a lot of this, but it's definitely something when you see the research out, it's very it's influential. We know that intuitively and kind of by experience that some of these things make a difference. But then when you see, about community, about not eating till you're stuffed, and having a way to unwind, whether that's meditation, whether that's going for a walk, whether that's having some tea, maybe, the different things that that can provide you some relaxation and to get out of that high stress mode can really make a difference. And then the sense of purpose, I think all of you coming to this meeting today, it shows that you're interested in learning and making a difference in your health and the health of others. And so there's a purpose, there's wanting to learn, there's wanting to, engage and be a part of a community. So I think just by the nature of everyone being part of the community day, that says something. And then Tina, with you putting these on, Shervonda making this a monthly event, I think as well, that provides that sense of right tribe, coming together and being with other like-minded people.
Yeah, I love today. Every time I finish community day, I'm so happy. I feel like it's a place for me to talk to everybody, to share information.
Yes, exactly. That's the question. Has there been any studies on purpose and community since Blue Zones noted them as important for long life? Yes. The Blue Zones site, I think it's bluezones.com actually. I should know this. There is a wealth of research. They're continually doing research, and like I said, they're going to reveal an additional Blue Zone supposedly this summer. And National Geographic is a good probably source of information as well, because they've been doing this research, and then the National Institute on Aging. I know here in Marin, where I am, there's the Buck Institute. They've done a lot of studies on aging as well. But there is, all the studies too, we hear about loneliness being compared to smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. So if you're feeling those, effects, it has a physical impact as well. So I think probably you could spend hours looking at the research on this. But yes, Blue Zones, a lot of research about purpose and community. Those are two of the pillars of the Blue Zones, having a purpose I think, and it's been emphasized too in some of these blue zones, that the elderly community, they're there helping out with the young, their grandchildren. So they have that sense of purpose of passing down traditions and assisting the family. And even, you've seen some of these pictures too. They're out there doing things. Their purpose is, to be healthy and to continue to learn and to engage with each other. They're out socializing, having wine and playing dominoes. So there's still this sense of, we want to continue to enjoy and to engage. In your list is muscular resistance, one of the findings too. I haven't seen something on muscle. I'm thinking maybe strength training, I'm guessing. And certainly moving naturally, as we talked about. And we know that obviously strength training is good to build your bones. And we talked about the Nicoya Peninsula, where they have their foods can be rich in nutrients to enhance your bones. But in terms of strength training, I think it's really just the natural movement. They're in their gardens, they're harvesting. So they're doing actually the strength training resistance that we would think to do in the gym. They're actually doing outdoors, and that's building their bones. So I would think that would be the connection there. Yes, carrying water, making tortillas, exactly. Some things that we wouldn't necessarily think about, but even us, we're doing activities of your, vacuuming your floor, or, you're out gardening, doing laundry or something, and all these little movements throughout the day can make a difference. So yeah. Any other questions or things to share? Well, thank you, everyone. It's been so nice to meet with all of you, and hopefully you've been reminded or learned something new, or both. And then I'll provide these links. Tina, do you want me to put them in the chat now, or do you want me to just send them to you afterwards?
Via email, and then I'll send it to everybody. Yeah,
perfect. I can do that for sure. Yeah, I put the next slide. I think there's
I would like to do the true vitality test. That would be interesting.
Yes, that's one. I think if I even click on this, I wonder if it will open up into something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, begin a 3-minute test.
It's a 3-minute. Maybe you can put that on the chat. And
okay, let me see if I can do this.
So I think you just copy and then put it.
I'll put a couple of these in there for everyone. Yeah.
That would be great.
Let me do that one. I think the challenge one too is good, but let's see, the blue zones, maybe the Power 9 would be a good one for people to have. Those are the ones that we just talked about.
I'd appreciate a list of all those references. They all look excellent.
I know. So
yeah,
and she'll send us the link, and then she'll send us all the link in the email, and I'll forward you.
Yeah, this is the one too that I talked about, the New York Times article.
Wow. Okay.
And then this one too, this week by week. I think these are fun too. This is like the challenge. Let me see. If
I really find the New York Times heading very powerful.
Yes, right.
Get to die.
This one you can see here. If you click on the week, it'll give you this is in the way probably, but it will give you different, tips and reminders not to eat in front of a screen. Oh my gosh, how many of us do that? It used to be eating in front of the TV, but now, obviously they're adding phones here too. When we're distracted, we don't really realize what we're eating. We're probably going to get past that 80% full. As well, we're not really digesting our food within a natural, relaxed manner. But yeah, you can see here, there's just a lot of, you can scroll down and, get into more information. And each page there's, further information. Blue Zone's kitchen. Let me do this one. I'll do put this in the chat too, so people can have that one. Any other ones that you see that you might like? Blue Zone's diets, food secrets, a lot of good stuff. Let's see what this one goes into. I think it's on their site too, probably. If you go onto their Instagram, which actually they probably have it on the very bottom. Oops, a lot of information here. The Instagram site has just lots of quick. Let me see if I can even just click on it. Let's see if it will let me. Yes. Let me move this out of the way. Let me get this out of the way. So you'll see here their Instagram post. So just quick things, recipes, imagery, you know, so you'll just get more of a taste for the Blue Zones if you're, you know, on Instagram or you want to check that out. And again, they have a Facebook page too. And even if you just go on Google and you search Blue Zones, you will find so much information. And like I said, I just came across this talk. He was interviewed, and they actually made one of the Blue Zones recipes in the talk. So that was fun to see too. And yeah, any other information, let me know. Well, get it, or you can let Tina know, and we can get that to you. But great questions. And I hope that all of you have a lovely rest of your day and find ways to get out and move a little bit after this talk. I'm not sure what the next talk is, Tina. Is there any movement in the next talk?
We have a movement at 3:00.
Okay, perfect.
But we had a couple of movements today already, so.
Yeah, well, you can even get up. I should have probably done that as you're right now, if you're able to, or if you're seated and you can't get up, you can just do some stretches, you know, roll your shoulders back and your head around and things like that. So
great. Thank you so much, Mira Kanter.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and have a great rest of your community day.
Take care.
You.
Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks. Bye.